Water with salt, and I'm going to basically blanch it real quick. One thing to remember, green vegetables, always put them in boiling water. Broccoli, asparagus, even cauliflower. If it's a root vegetable, you want to start them in cold water. Green vegetables, hot water; root vegetables, cold water. The reason is, if I was to put my asparagus in cold water and bring it up to a boil, the outer part of the asparagus would probably overcook by the time the inner part of the asparagus was al dente. And one thing with root vegetables, if you put them in boiling water, the outside is going to overcook before the inside actually does cook, and it could actually turn to mush. Alright, so a couple things we have to do to wrap this up. We definitely want to cut some more lemon for garnish. And I have a nice citrus knife here that works fantastic for lemon. Just for our garnish. And we also need to chop a little fresh parsley. You could use curly parsley, Italian parsley, flat leaf parsley. You could use dry parsley. I actually am fortunate enough, I do have some fresh parsley growing over on our patio. Try to remove most of the stem. We don't need an excessive amount, but just enough to make the dish look. And I'll even save some that we can garnish with as well. Notice pinching the blade with my thumb and index finger, and I'm rocking the knife. The students love chopping parsley because they think they're cool if they can go real fast. That's typically when I have to call the nurse down because they're trying to rush. They usually only do that once though. That's probably plenty right there for garnish. Parsley does have a flavor to it. Not that it's used as a big flavor enhancer, it's mostly used as garnish. But you definitely don't want to overwhelm with it. Alright. Let's season our water. Don't recall if I did. We'll hit it again for the asparagus. The asparagus is going to take, once that water's boiling, when I put the room temperature asparagus in, it's going to bring the water down. Once it comes back up to a boil, it's going to take maybe 3 minutes. I like my asparagus with just a little bit of a bite to it. I don't necessarily like it to be fully cooked all the way. We'll refer to that as al dente once again. I'm going to turn my chicken down just a little bit. And I'm actually just going to put a little bit of parsley on top now. It's amazing what just a little bit of parsley will do for a dish. I think our water is coming to a boil right now. If you had a cover, you can cover it. If not, I'm just using a cover just to speed things up just a little bit. I'm going to clean my mess up for final plate presentation. And I do hope that next year, none of us know what school is going to look like, but I sure do hope that we will have the opportunity to come over to the senior center and pick up where we left off. I'm going to have 2 seniors that I do know are still going to want to do the cooking class that we had scheduled for May. I know one student wanted to do a green tea maca creme brulee, and the other student wanted to do some sort of braised, I think braised beef short ribs. The girl that wants to do the savory dish, the beef, is really, really good at seasoning and the braising technique of searing and slow simmering So they're really looking forward to that. Hopefully we can get over there and make it happen. I think total prep time and cook time for this dish is probably going to be around, I'm going to use 30 to 40 minutes, depending upon, you know, what you're capable of in the kitchen. It's very, very manageable, very, very easy to do. It's funny, I can do this for 200 people much easier than I just made this look for 4 people. It's just because of how I'm trained. Asparagus is going to need about 2 minutes. Just came back up to a boil. Now, I could drain the asparagus when it's al dente and then put a little bit of olive oil in the pan, salt, pepper, granulated garlic, and saute it real quick. There's a bunch of different ways. I actually like it with just a little bit of teriyaki glaze and a little bit of fresh ginger sauteed in there with garlic. Today we're just going to keep it simple. Salt, pepper, and I'll put a little bit of oil on it at the end. For anybody that loves asparagus, some of the best asparagus in the world comes from right here in Massachusetts, South Hadley, or near the Hadley farm markets. I highly recommend it. Making a bit of a mess. So I'm going to kind of plate this up kind of family style. Of course, you could do it any way you choose. And then just pour that sauce. Totally okay to have a little bit of sauce on top of your pasta. Yep, the burn is fine. Yep. Anyway. A little more of our fresh chopped parsley. And I always like to maybe put a couple on the side. You know, you don't want to go through the process of making a nice dish and then not presenting it accordingly. Even a red bell pepper on there might look good too. And don't forget, in my opinion, one of the main attractions, the prosciutto. I just think it adds such a salty and then crunchy texture just to make that so much better. But it's not necessary. I think our asparagus is done. I'm going to use the cover as a hold it while I drain it. Careful not to burn yourself. Salt and pepper. And then I'm just going to use a little bit of avocado oil right over the top. Now the students at Westfield Technical Academy always wonder why I tell them when they cut asparagus to always keep the tips going the same way. And they have a hard time understanding when it comes to presentation or even on a buffet. I think it just looks so much neater, so much cleaner when you have the tips of the asparagus all going the same way. So, besides my mess I made on my workstation here, I think we put together a really nice lunch for my wife, myself, my mother-in-law I believe is coming over to enjoy this with us. But that is classical Italian-American chicken francais with a flour and egg batter. Or crust over angel hair pasta with a lemon butter white wine sauce and some simmered blanched asparagus. I hope everybody enjoyed the demonstration today. Maybe Miss Sullivan can organize another one. I'm not opposed to doing one over the summer for you guys. From Still Meadow Farms, Chef Rogers, thank you so much for your time and have a great day. Hi, good afternoon. This is Chef Rogers from Westfield Technical Academy coming to you from Still Meadow Farm in Munson, Massachusetts. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of a cooking demonstration for the participants of our Southwick Senior Center cooking class on behalf of Westfield Technical Academy in Westfield, Massachusetts. Today we're going to be doing a classical dish, Italian-American dish called chicken Francaise. I've heard it pronounced several different ways. I've had Italian friends make this dish and it was totally different than this recipe. But classically, it's a chicken breast dredged in flour and then dipped in an egg batter and sauteed or lightly fried. So today we are going to make a recipe. Hope everybody has a copy of the recipe in front of them today. So for starters, the first thing we want to do is make our flour and our egg coating to go onto the chicken breast. So today, our recipe calls for a half a cup of flour. And our half a cup of flour, best practice is to scoop your flour with one device and pour it into your measuring device, as opposed to scooping with your measuring device. So here I like to use a spoon. I'm just going to pour the flour into my half cup measuring device. And try to make sure you're using a dry measure, not a liquid measuring device. And then I just typically come back and even that off with a knife. Half a cup of flour is going to go into a shallow dish or a shallow pan, whatever you have access to. And we are going to lightly salt and pepper our flour. And I'm using fresh cracked black pepper. It actually has white peppercorns, red peppercorns, green peppercorns, and black all in that mix. The recipe, I believe, calls for a kosher salt. I choose to use pink Himalayan salt. That's just my preference. You can follow the measurements on the recipe. I am just kind of eyeballing how much salt and pepper I choose to have in my flour. And taste kind of goes on dependence of what you're looking for. Some of us are a little more conscious about our health these days, and the salt you may want to back off on. You could actually use a regular chicken broth with this recipe and not salt your flour, or salt your flour and use a low sodium chicken broth. So there's step one, seasoned flour. Step two, we want to prepare our eggs. Preferably 3 large eggs. Here today I have 3 different eggs. They're from different breeds of chickens. The color of the egg is basically just based on the variety of the chicken in which laid the egg. Not really local egg, brown eggs. That's kind of a commercial, not reality. The brown ones I have here are from Rhode Island Reds, and the white ones are actually from New Hampshire Red. It's kind of same variety, just different strains. Always crack your egg on a flat surface. You'll hopefully avoid getting shells into your dish. Sometimes most people try to crack it on a sharp edge and you end up getting shells in there. Wash my hands. And we have 2 tablespoons of water that are going to be added in with the egg. You could use milk, you could use skim milk, you can use heavy cream. And I'm just going to beat the eggs. You want these to be as smooth as possible. You don't want curds or strands of egg that are too large, because it'll come off during the cooking process. So the better whisk you can have this. Now, if I had a stainless steel bowl, I could probably accomplish this much faster and much more efficiently, but for all intents and purposes for our demo today, the fork in the bowl will work. Yep, the finer you can get the curds of egg, the better coating you will have on your chicken. And it's okay to pull your eggs out a half hour before doing this and letting them warm up to room temperature. They'll actually break up in the dish a little better than when they're cold. Just the albumin will soften up a little better, allow it to mix. I think that'll be good. So we have our flour coating and we have our egg batter. Now for the chicken, you can buy chicken so many different ways nowadays. Ironically, I just picked up 25 chickens or chicks from the post office today. My wife and I decided to raise our own meat chickens. We purchased Cornish Rock Cross is what they're called. So we have about 10 to 11 weeks before those chickens will be ready. Today we purchased boneless, skinless breast of chicken, and the recipe calls for a pound, and this is right around a pound. These were a little thick, so I decided to butterfly them in half. You could put them between saran wrap and use a meat mallet and pound them out. I think that kind of breaks down the integrity of the chicken a little bit. Some applications it's good. For this, I prefer not to. I'm going to butterfly the chicken in half. Be very, very careful doing this should you choose to do it. You can also, in most supermarkets now, actually purchase chicken that is cut into thinner strips. You can use it for fajitas, stir fry, all kinds of things. So hand flat on top, knife, proper grip of the knife, which is pinching the blade with your thumb and forefinger, index finger rather, forefinger. And then now, we're just going to use the knife like a saw and kind of come in and cut the chicken breast directly in half. Be very, very careful. Make sure you know where the blade of the knife is at all times, and that'll yield us 2 nice strips. These will actually cook quicker and be more uniform and consistent. I'm going to remove my chicken saturated cutting board and knife. Another wash of the hands. Now, I believe I showed most of our participants at the cooking class my induction cooktop, which works on magnetics. There's no electric heat source or flame here. It works on magnetics. So you have to have induction cookware to utilize an induction cooktop. Anytime you saute something, you want to make sure that your pan is hot and your cooking medium, whether it's oil, butter, combination of the two, is hot as well. If we were to coat the chicken with the flour and the egg and go right into cool or room temperature oil, the oil is going to soak up right into the chicken, and it's going to get very, very oily and just saturated with oil. You want it to be hot so it forms an immediate crust on that chicken. Another important thing too, when you do put this chicken into the saute pan, I want to make sure that you know only to turn it once. Don't keep turning the chicken because you don't want your egg batter crust to come off, and it will if you keep flipping it. The recipe calls for avocado oil. Olive oil. I've chosen to use avocado oil. We get it at BJ's. This is Wellesley Farms brand, which is BJ's brand. It's got a higher smoke point or flame point than olive oil. You can actually heat this up to 500 degrees and it won't catch fire. Whereas butter, you probably have flames in your pan at 350 or even lower. So, pan's hot. You know, when it comes to amount of oil to put into a pan for sauteing, I don't always follow the recipe. I kind of say to myself, how big is my pan? I want the pan to be evenly coated on the bottom, but not so much that it's going to be swimming in the oil. And I can tell by looking, you can see ripples in the oil. That tells me that the oil is heating up. Once I put room temperature oil into a hot pan, I'm actually cooling the pan down. So there's a recovery time that you need to allow the pan to get hot again. Now, in the essence of time and the lack of only having 2 burners, I'm actually going to go ahead and start my angel hair pasta real quick that we're going to be doing. I already have some water to a boil. Once again, I add a little bit of avocado oil. In my mind, that prevents the pasta from sticking. And always season your water. And my wife always tells me, you know, taste the water. Don't be afraid to taste the water. The water should taste slightly salted. And it's just going to enhance the flavor of your pasta. So we're going to go ahead. I have about 8 ounces of angel hair pasta. And I'm not going to break it because I want it. And this takes literally maybe 2 minutes to cook. And I'm not going to mix it right now. I'm going to kind of wait until it softens. And then we'll start to bring it down. Angel hair pasta for al dente is just about 2 minutes. And it's very, very delicate. Much thinner than spaghetti. But I think with a dish like chicken francais, it goes very, very well. All right, so once again, I just put room temperature pasta into the water. It's going to take a little bit to come back to a boil. You just want to make sure you stir it briefly just to coat all the pasta with the oil, and that will hopefully prevent it from sticking. I think that should be good. Al dente on pasta means it's just a little bit of bite left to the very center of it. Typically, you could take spaghetti and break it in half and just see like a little white pin dot in the middle. Can't really do that with angel hair because it's so small. We would need a magnifying glass to actually see what I'm talking about. Our oil is hot. We're going to gently coat our chicken. They refer to this as dredging your chicken in flour. And then we're going to coat. It does help if you keep one hand in the flour and one hand in the egg. Not always feasible. And right in. Try not to move the chicken when it first goes in. You want that crust to form. You should hear sizzling when you put the chicken into the oil and see snap, crackle, and pop going on. If you don't, your oil in your pan is not hot enough. We're going to have to do 2 rounds. Now I know you've heard the students refer to the term mise en place. This is my mise en place. Everything I need, everything's in its place. It's a French term for everything being in its place. Our angel hair pasta is done. My colander is prepared. If you're fishing around for a colander, believe it or not, your angel hair pasta will overcook. I'll let that strain. That's about the color I'm looking for on the chicken francais. Lightly golden brown. If you prefer a little more color, color is flavor. So if you prefer a little more color, certainly cook it a little longer. Just be aware, you could tend to dry your chicken out too. While those are finishing up, I am going to dredge the rest of my chicken and get that prepared for the next run. Like I was saying earlier, a friend I have in Munson here is 100% Italian, and he always made chicken francais, and he never coated it in egg. He only did it in flour and referred to it as chicken francais. So I think it's whatever you've been brought up creating. I'm going to pour a little bit of oil onto my pasta to prevent it from sticking. And our chicken is probably a minute away from being complete, or fully cooked. Now the chicken doesn't have to be 100% cooked right here. Because we're going to finish the chicken in the sauce. So I am going to remove the chicken. From the pan and just put it into any type of pan. You could put it on a plate if you wanted to. And I think we have plenty of oil in there to go with our next batch. If your egg batter and flour absorb too much oil, feel free to add a little bit in. But I think we're going to be okay here. So, I do try to work as neat and clean as possible. If you don't need something, best practice is to remove it from your workstation. Now, most chicken Francaise recipes that I have come across and prepared over the years, just typically chicken dredged in flour, dipped in an egg wash, lightly sauteed, finished in a white wine lemon butter sauce. I've seen people put garlic in it. I've seen just about everything. One thing someone taught me years ago was to saute a little bit of prosciutto ham, which is an Italian dry cured ham. You can find it in most supermarkets, delis, so on and so forth. If you do decide to go with that, make sure to slice it very, very thin, or it can get a little chewy. Now, we need to cook our asparagus, and we also need to saute our prosciutto ham real quick. And I'm going to give the chicken just another minute or two. What I love about the induction cooktop is I can set it for 375 degrees, 370. You can pinpoint exactly what you're looking for. It's amazing. So, we're going to take our prosciutto ham and I'm just going to cut it into julienne strips. So julienne is technically an 1/8 by an 1/8 by 2 inches long, so it probably won't be quite julienne. Let's call this matchstick. It's almost like cutting bacon. Always use your knife like a saw. Don't just push flat. You want to move it forward, move it forward. And then we just have some nice julienne strips. And this is fully cooked, just like ham. You can eat it just like you would a piece of ham. It's slightly salty, very, very good. You generally accompany with it something with it. I can always refer back to melanin prosciutto, which we did. I was just checking the other side. I did turn that twice, for anybody that was paying attention. Now, keep that pan. Don't throw out that pan. That's going to be the base of making our sauce. First off, smaller pan. Ooh, I grabbed the wrong pan. That's not the one I want. Just the non-stick pan will work a little better. Okay. Heat your pan up, a little bit of oil, and then we're going to go with the prosciutto. We also have to do some asparagus. And we're just going to blanch our asparagus. And with the asparagus, you always want to just cut the woody ends off. My wife and I do grow asparagus. Unfortunately, we've harvested all of ours for the year, so I did have to purchase this. Try to compost all your kitchen scraps if you can. So now, prosciutto ham. I just want to crisp it up. Almost think of bacon. And my oil could have definitely been hotter. There's a prime example. But we are sizzling. Now, let's see. So, to start with our sauce, I'm going to go medium-high heat. I'm looking at about 375 degrees. I am going to put just a touch more oil into this pan. It's okay if there's little bits and particles. We're going to deglaze. Deglaze is a method of removing all the bits and particles off the pan that will actually enhance the flavor and quality of your sauce. Get that prosciutto nice and crispy. That will take a minute. Even though it's dry cured, there is a little bit of moisture in it. And it won't crisp until the moisture comes out. Anyway, asparagus is set. So, following the recipe, we have our pan hot. we're actually going to slice half of our lemon, which I already did, and we're going to put those slices right into the pan. And we're basically extracting the flavor of the lemon. And you don't have to cook it very long. The oils will come right out of the lemon rind and start to infuse themselves into our cooking fat. Just the smell that's filling up our kitchen is fantastic. Now, I'm using a Chardonnay for my white wine, and I'm also using, it's actually store-bought chicken stock. I did have some in the freezer, but didn't think to pull it. Whenever you have chicken bones, try to make a quick stock with the bones. Add some mirepoix, which is celery, carrot, and onion. 50% onion, 25% carrot, 25% celery. Bay leaf, couple peppercorns, and just simmer it in some water, and you'll make the much better chicken stock than you can purchase it at any store. Homemade, I think, is always best. That's starting to crisp up nice. Now, we're going to deglaze our pan. Deglazing, we're going to add our wine first. If you're using a gas range, I would remove the pan from the heat because alcohol is flammable. And you notice all those bits and particles, it instantly colored the wine. And we want to evaporate the alcohol. I'm not after the actual alcohol, I'm looking for the flavor of the wine itself. I use Chardonnay, you could use any type of white wine. You could use champagne if that's all you have. Totally fine. Now I'm going to go with the 1 cup of chicken stock or chicken broth. If you don't have access to it, you could simply use water. You won't achieve the flavor we're looking for, but you do need the liquid in there. So now we're going to bring that up to a quick boil. You want to reduce it. When this comes up to a boil, you will notice steam coming off. That steam is evaporating liquid, whether it's the water that came out of the lemons or the actual wine, the alcohol, or the water that's in the chicken broth. You really want to make sure you reduce it. As you reduce it and evaporate the moisture, you would intensify or enhance the flavor and quality of the sauce. The less volume that we end up with will result in a more flavorful sauce. I think our prosciutto is just about ready. And like I said, I like it crispy because it adds a flavor contrast to the chicken. And another culinary instructor at Chicopee Comprehensive High School in Chicopee taught me this trick. Whenever he showed me, I said, you can't put prosciutto on chicken Francaise, but guess what? It really, really kicks it up a notch. Our sauce is coming to a boil. Now we want to cook this maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes, depending upon what your heat is, and we want to reduce this. I'm going to say probably 1/3 to 1/2 is what I want to end up with. Now, let me see here. It's going to take the prosciutto out. It will keep cooking. Now, there's a couple different ways we could thicken this sauce up because it looks kind of boring. It looks like water. As we reduce it, it might slightly get a little thicker, but we really need to add a starch. We could do a cornstarch slurry, which would be, you could take 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, put it in a small bowl or a cup, and just put enough water in it to make it liquid. And slowly drizzle that in while it's boiling and whisk it and tighten it up. Or you could use roux, which is equal parts of fat and flour. Typically you're going to use butter and margarine and flour. And melt the butter, mix it with the flour, cook the flour down so you don't taste the flour, and then add it to your sauce or stock, whichever you're preparing. Today we're actually going to make something a little bit different. Same ingredients, but it's called a beurre, which is cold butter, not melted, mashed with some flour. And I think the recipe calls for, 2 tablespoons and 2 tablespoons? Well, the original half cup flour, we used it for the dredge. So we're actually just going to take about 2 tablespoons of flour. And we're going to take about 2 tablespoons of butter. Pinch more. And we're actually just going to mash it together. Your fingers may actually be your best tool to do this. I remember the first time I learned how to do this was from a classical French chef at Johnson & Wales, and I thought I was making cookie dough. You know, I thought he was messing with me, but little did I know I was actually thickening up a lobster stock for a Newburgh sauce. And I didn't realize at that point that you could thicken something with this method. If you just put the flour into that simmering stock and wine, you're going to end up with lumps, aka my grandmother's gravy for years until I taught her how to make a roux. So you need it to be kind of blended with some sort of fat. And ironically, my sophomores, through remote learning right now, the unit that we're teaching out of the National Restaurant Association Pro Start Manual is all on stocks, sauces, and soups. So that's about what I end up with. That's basically a roux that has not been cooked, and it's referred to as a beurre meunier. Okay, that was one of my students' vocab terms for this morning. I'm going to wash my hands real quick. Now, before I add my thickener to my sauce, I'm going to lightly salt it. A little bit of fresh cracked black pepper. And I want to taste my sauce prior to thickening it, because I can adjust it much easier while it's thin. I think it's good. Now, we don't want to add all of this. We're just going to add maybe a small amount. You'll probably have some left over. If this over thickens, we could just add a little bit of water or chicken stock to bring it back. And I can already tell that I may have put a little too much in. I'm actually going to remove it from the heat real quick. Now we probably added a little too much roux to that, but I don't think it's a deal breaker, because we can adjust very easily. I'm just going to add a little bit of tap water. On a line in the kitchen, you have pitchers of water, bottles of white wine, everything at your disposal that you can add to it. I think the sauce thickened up nicely. I will give it another try. Now, what can I show you? So I kind of like my sauces a little smooth. You know, looking for the texture of it. I like it to be smooth, and I'm not a big fan of particles. And I worry about maybe a lemon seed. So I'm actually going to strain this. This is what we call as a China cap, but this is a fine chinois. And I'm just going to run my sauce through the chinois. The last thing I want or would want in my restaurant is somebody to choke on a lemon seed that they did not know was there. I'd rather pull that lemon out and then garnish with some fresh lemon. And I think in this case, it's definitely appropriate. Just going to push the rest of that through. You can already see the sauce looks so much better since being strained. Yep. And it's totally normal to have, you know, some pieces of roux left behind. That's why typically anytime I do make a sauce with a roux as a thickening agent, I'll generally strain it. Now, the sauteed prosciutto ham smells fantastic, and I really think that accompanies this very well. So now, we're going to take our chicken, and we are going to go back into our pan, because the chicken might be only maybe 2/3 of the way cooked, might be, you know, fully cooked, but you want to bring it back up to temperature because it's cooled down while sitting in the pan with that sauce. Yeah, I think the texture of that is good. Now, personally, I think that could use a little more liquid. So, we're just going to wait for that sauce to come back up to a boil. We'll move our chicken around a little bit. Be careful that you don't lose your breading. And we want to leave it uncovered. And we have to get our asparagus going. So, you could grill the asparagus, you could boil the asparagus. I'm actually going to use a saute pan with a small amount of water.